Hello everybody, I've just briefly popped in here to congratulate the greatest, the fantastic, the best ever group that the UK has managed to produce. As I say, I'd just like to congratulate them on their #1 album that's just reached, as I say, #1 in the UK charts this past weekend. Have you any idea who it is I'm actually talking about? The band I'm talking about, of course, is the fantastic Madness, and I'm just going to hold up for you right now their latest album. There we have it, the latest LP from Madness, and it's called The Theatre of the Absurd Presents Madness. C'est la vie. Just going to hold it up one more time for you. Now, us Madness fans, we've been waiting approximately 7 years for this new release. The last album they released, as I say, was probably about 7 years ago or so, and it was called Can't Touch Us Now. Now, for me personally as a Madness fan, I don't think it was one of their finest LPs. In fact, it was kind of slightly disappointing because it wasn't up to the usual very high standards of a Madness LP. Now, I've been a Madness fan as long as I can remember. In fact, I became a Madness fan when I was just 10 years old. And I'm going to tell you a little story of how it all began, of my journey of being a Madness fan. It was December of 1979, and my parents, or my mum should I say, more than my parents, my mum was taking me around to my nan and granddad's house. And there I was sitting in the lounge of my nan and granddad, where my nan brought me a gift from my auntie. When I opened up this gift, I found inside my first ever record. I didn't have any records, I didn't have a record collection, but there I was, I got my first ever vinyl record. And it was, of course, Madness's One Step Beyond that had just been released a couple of months earlier. Being just 10 years old, I wasn't hugely familiar with who Madness were because I was so young, I was only just starting to get into music per se. I think I'd seen Madness on Top of the Pops performing, maybe it was My Girl or One Step Beyond or something like that. But as I say, I wasn't hugely familiar of who they were. So what I did was, I was sitting in my nan and granddad's lounge and they had one of those old retro kind of record players. You know the type I mean, where it was long and on the left hand side you'd have the turntable section, and then on the right hand side you'd have the tape deck section where you play your old analog type of tape, and on the front panel is where you would have the radio station and the tuner to tune in whatever radio station you wanted to listen to. Anyway, there I was. I sat down on this chair they gave me. They gave me a pair of headphones so that I didn't disturb them. I stuck this pair of headphones on my head and I just sat there fixed for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, playing side A, then playing side B, back to side A, back to side B, getting myself familiar with this Madness album. And I absolutely fell in love with it. In fact, I fell so much in love with it, that album went with me absolutely everywhere I went as a young lad. Now thinking about it, I think that's probably the most played record I've got in my record collection. As I say, I played One Step Beyond to absolute death. Never in my life, never did I think for one moment when I got that LP in 1979 I'll be buying a new Madness LP in 2023. It seems quite remarkable, and that's the reason why I say they're the greatest, they're the best ever band the UK has ever produced, just because of the amount of years that they've been going, the amount of top 10 hits they've ever had. Now, I'm not saying that Suggs, the lead singer of Madness, is the greatest singer in the world, because he's not. But for me, what made Madness so special was purely down to Suggs. His personality, his charisma, his presence on the stage, his presence when he was on Top of the Pops, his presence when he was on the Old Grey Whistle Test. I don't know if anyone remembers the early Old Grey Whistle Test when Madness were on there. Just seeing Suggs and Chaz, I think for me they were the main two of Madness and what made them so popular. Suggs, as I say, his charisma and his way he led the band, and Chaz, obviously, for his dancing. Everyone knows straight away when Chaz Smash was dancing for Madness. Now, when you see Madness in concert, your kind of opinion, I think my opinion definitely changed of them when I saw them in concert, because I was too young to see them in concert when I was 10, because at that time in 1980 there was a movement that started up and that was absolutely exploded in the UK in 1980, 1981, and that was the two-tone movement, and that consisted of the Specials, the Beat, the Selector, Madness, etc., and it was absolutely huge in the UK. I was too young to ever see any of those concerts, but when you see footage of those concerts, you could just see the energy that was behind those bands. And when you used to see the young lads get on the stage with the Specials when they were sort of doing their own encore at the end, all those young lads getting on the stage and dancing along with the Specials, absolutely fantastic days. As I say, I was just a few years too young to sort of attend one of those type of concerts. Obviously, I got to see Madness in my later years. As I say, I think the thing that I appreciated about Madness is that when you go to a Madness concert, it's like being in a fairground attraction. You know, when you go to the fair, there's all those different kind of party sounds going on all around you. Well, it's kind of like that when you're attending a Madness concert. They had that typical Madness nutty sound, but I think the thing that really has stood out for me when I've seen Madness in concert, it's the saxophone player, Lee Thompson. He's just a magician with that saxophone. The guy is absolutely first class when it comes to playing the saxophone. As I say, all those that go to Madness concerts and have watched Madness develop over the years, because we're talking about a man that couldn't even play the saxophone when sort of Madness were in their early days, who's become, as I say, an absolute legend. When you see them in concert, Lee Thompson on the saxophone, the man is an absolute legend. Now, I've seen people talk about Madness as they get older, saying that they've lost that nutty sound. Well, to me, that's pretty obvious that something like that is obviously going to happen. And the reason is because we all mature. I mean, I'm not the same as what I was when I was 10 years old. We haven't got the energy of what we got when we were 10 years old. We don't view the world in the same way as what we do when we were a teenager. Everything, as we get older and get more mature and get wiser, hopefully, our experiences change us. We're not the same people. Sort of, I find like every 10 years we kind of change our opinion and our thoughts on things. And I think the same things happen with Madness, that over time you can see how they've matured as a band and they've lost that sort of early days nutty ska sound. It's obvious they're not going to have that kind of sound in their latest LP. Anybody expecting that, I think, sort of, I don't know what they're thinking about. As I say, the sound of Madness has completely changed over the years. Obviously, you know, we're talking about Suggs. When he was first on Top of the Pops singing The Prince, he was 18 years old. Now Suggs is in his 60s. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? From 18 years old to someone now in his 60s. And as I say, the music's matured. And as I say, it's great, this new album, because I think it's brought Madness back, the Madness that we love. As I say, I think the last album, to me again, was slightly disappointing, because when you listen to Madness albums, say One Step Beyond, Absolutely, Madness 7, Keep Moving, etc., 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 you listen to other music from the 80s or even 20 years ago, and you listen to music and listen to albums, and you can hear how much the music has dated. You can tell it's an album from the 80s. Now, you listen to a Madness album from the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, whatever. Those albums haven't aged at all. They still sound as fresh today in 2023 as what they did in 1979 and moving forward. They still sound good. And to me, that highlights the talent that Madness have got in writing classic songs, timeless songs that you can listen to 40 years later and they still sound as fresh as what they did 40 years ago. Now, to me, that's something quite remarkable, and that's why Madness, to me, are so loved. As I say, they might not be the most talentedest band in the world, but when it comes to making great pop music that people love, that people get up and sing to, everyone knows the songs, the lyrics, should I say, of Madness songs. Everybody knows them. Everybody knows Madness videos. The laughter they used to have when Madness were on Top of the Pops. Seeing Madness perform on Buckingham Palace. Madness have achieved basically everything over the 40 years. So for me, it's great pleasure now that I'm in my 50s and Madness are in their 60s to release yet again another absolutely superb album. And what I particularly like about this album is that Madness have cottoned on. They've cottoned on to what's been happening since 2020. To me, they're awake, and you can see by some of the titles and the lyrics in these songs that they're fully aware of what's going on since the year 2020. So for me, it was quite interesting that a group like Madness have even picked up on this fact. So, you know, I'm absolutely dead happy that Madness in 2023 unbelievably are still releasing fantastic music, and you wonder when will be the last ever Madness album, because sadly I think it's all sort of caught up on Suggs. Suggs has always been a man that's aged well, but I think in the last couple of years I think his lifestyle's catching up on him, and it's a little bit sad when you see Suggs on TV. It seems a little bit more, his health doesn't seem in the greatest of conditions, so obviously I wish him well, and wish obviously the same for the rest of the band. And I just say thank you to Madness for giving us fantastic music for over 40 years. Thanks a lot, lads. We really appreciate it, our Madness fans. And once again, congratulations on being finally number one in the UK album charts. Well done, lads.